Hello everyone. So I don't normally do TBR videos. I don't feel like they have a lot of lasting value, and I felt like they might be a bit of a waste of time. And I never want to waste the people's time who watch this channel, for which I'm very thankful for, and I never want to waste my time making videos that don't have much of a point. And most of my reading tends to be pretty sporadic. I tend to mood read, as the kids call it, quite a bit, but also I do a lot of my reading from things that I get from the library, and so I don't really know what I'll have access to or not, but I think I came up with a system that hopefully will be interesting in giving some predictions for what I'm thinking of reading over the course of the next month. And the way I justified it to myself is I think it's going to be a bit of a community building thing. I'll be able to engage a little bit more on some of the books that I've read, especially now that I'm trying to do wrap-ups a bit more. Talk about what I've read, even if I don't make a full dedicated review on it. So what I'm going to do here, to keep the mood reading spirit alive and well, I'm going to talk about 4 books that I'm certain I will be reading in the month of March, in this upcoming month. 4 books that are maybes that I might get to, and then 4 books that I likely won't, but they're still on the radar, and I would like to get to them sometime soon. So the 4 books that I am for sure going to read in the month of March, the first one is going to be The Warrior Prophet by R. Scott Bakker. So this is the second book in his Prince of Nothing trilogy, also the second book in the larger Second Apocalypse series. I read the first book, The Darkness That Comes Before, in late December. It was the last book that I read in 2024, and I intended to read Warrior Prophet both in January and then in February, and it didn't happen. And I don't want to put this off for too long. R. Scott Bakker has very helpfully included very long summaries of the book before at the beginning of The Warrior Prophet. So thankfully I'll have that to help catch me back up to speed as to where we were, but I liked The Darkness That Comes Before. I did not love it, and I think The Warrior Prophet might have more of what I'm looking for in this series. So I plan on reading at least this first trilogy by Bakker, and then deciding how I'll feel about the rest of the Second Apocalypse books. So yeah, anyway, so I plan on reading Warrior Prophet in March. The next book is going to be Thrice by Andrew D. Meredith. So I am trying to read more self-published fantasy, because I really haven't read much other than Daniel Green's books and a couple of other ones, just here and there. So I'm trying to read at least one a month. We'll see if I stay consistent with that. And this month, I would like to read Thrice. So Andrew D. Meredith is a self-pub author that I came across pretty recently, mainly because of the recommendations by Tori on the channel Tori Talks. And she's highly recommended his stuff. She said especially his Collation Saga she thinks I'll like. Well, the novel Thrice and its sequel I picked up already, so I'm going to start with those, see how they click for me, and I don't really know anything about this. I've gone into this very much blind, but I plan on reading it in March. Next on the list is going to be Legion by William Peter Blatty. So in January, I read The Exorcist by Blatty, and that may have been my favorite book that I read in January. It was fantastic. I did not expect it to be a fraction of as good as it was. And Legion is written as sort of a sequel to The Exorcist, is my understanding. I know that the third Exorcist movie is based on this book. I have also watched the movie The Exorcist now for the first time after having read the book, and fantastic. It's amazing. Like, all the accolades people give it are incredible, are well warranted because the movie's incredible. And Exorcist 3 is a bit more divisive, so I'll be interested to compare the novel to the adaptation when the time comes. But I liked Blatty's writing a lot. I felt like he was an author who was really willing to go to places for what the story required. And so I'd like to read Legion, which is another one of his more famous books. The next novel that I will for sure be getting to in the month of March, and the last one that I'll list here, is The Liberation by Ian Tregillis. So this is book 3 in his Alchemy War series. I have been reading through this with Alan at the Library of Alexandria, Pete from Ponderings of Pete, and Nuclear Katie as well. So we've had one discussion so far as the recording of this video on the mechanical, and we all really enjoyed it. And I think most people have had a similar experience with book 2 The Rising. They felt like it was really good. I'm going to be honest, though. I have no idea where Ian Tregillis is going to take this series in book 3. Book 2 ended in a very weird way, so I don't know where he's going to go with it after this. It's about, in case you don't know, it is sort of an alternate history fantasy series about war between the Protestants and the Catholics in the Middle Ages, sort of came to a head when the Protestants developed robot technology through some sort of alchemy. And so the war has continued for centuries until the Catholics fled over to the New World, to America, and this is set sort of at the beginning of the 20th century. So as the war continues and kind of as it comes to a head. So I've enjoyed the series, and I'm excited to finish it up and see what everyone else in the reading group thinks. Next, we're going to talk about 4 books that are maybes. I'm not certain that I'll get to them in the month of March, but I would like to. And so the first book that we're going to talk about is The Frontiersman by Alan Eckert. So this novel, there's some dispute as to whether or not this is actually a novel or a actual piece of historical writing, like a history book. But I'm going to call it historical fiction for the time being. We'll see when I read it. Maybe I'll revise this statement. But I'm trying to read some more classic novels that are missing from sort of my back catalog of classics that I've read before. The Frontiersman isn't really a classic, but it's just old enough that I'm calling that as likely the classic that I will be reading in the month of March. As you can tell from the title, The Frontiersman, I know it's probably about America during the settler period. So I'm guessing probably late 1700s, early 1800s. Once again, I don't know a ton about the plot of this novel specifically, but hope to read it in the month of March. The next novel that I'll list here is the next Terminalist novel, which will probably be this one, In the Blood. There's a chance that I get to In the Blood in February, but if I don't, then it'll be one of the ones that I will read in March. So in terms of modern thriller authors, Jack Carr is my favorite. And his Terminalist series is fantastic. I've really enjoyed going through it. I am currently, as of the recording of this, I am currently going through book 4 in the series, The Devil's Hand, and In the Blood is book 5. So this series is fantastic. It is gripping. Jack Carr is an excellent writer, and if you want a Navy SEAL military thriller with some political espionage and globetrotting type of action that goes on in them, this series is fantastic, and you should pick it up. The other 2 books that are on the maybe list, one is On Stranger Tides by Tim Powers. So I read The Stress of Her Regard by Tim Powers in January and loved it, and I want to read a lot more Tim Powers this year. And On Stranger Tides is probably his famous or second most famous novel. It's a pirate novel, and it's pretty short. So I think I'll be able to finish it in March. And then the next one is going to be, the last maybe on the list, is going to be Night Side of the Long Sun by Gene Wolfe. So this is the beginning of his Book of the Long Sun quartet, which is a sequel series to Book of the New Sun. I've been meaning to go through Book of the Long Sun for months now, and that might just start in March. Once again, I don't know much about Book of the Long Sun specifically, but it's Wolfe, so obviously I want to read it and hopefully go through it here in the month of March. Now we're going to get to 4, likely not get to them in March. So we'll see how the wind blows. It's possible I get to these, but I might not. So the first book that we're going to talk about is Fever Dream by George Martin. So I obviously greatly appreciate Martin's Song of Ice and Fire series, and I'd like to read more of his stuff. Actually, in February, I went through Sand Kings, which is really a long short story by Martin, and it was fantastic. It was great. You got to see more of a side of him that's only hinted at in Song of Ice and Fire. So Fever Dream is his steamboat vampire novel, and I love vampires in books, at least a lot of vampires I like in books. So I'm really interested in reading this. In terms of Martin's not Song of Ice and Fire books, I think this is pretty widely his most popular. So yeah, we'll see if I get to it in March, but it's on the list here. Next up is going to be Aztec by Gary Jennings. So, I mean, for Pete's sake, this book is like the size of The Way of Kings. It is massive, it's small print. But Jordan from iWizard first put this on my radar here. It's historical fiction novel about the fall of the Aztec Empire. And he said it's sort of like Name of the Wind meets the Avatar movies with a little bit of apocalypto in it. And that sounds incredible. I will be totally honest, the size of this novel intimidates me. It intimidates me quite a bit. But the premise sounds interesting. I want to read more historical fiction. And the Aztec Empire is not a period of history that I know a lot about. And apparently Gary Jennings did a crap ton of research when writing this. Just a lot of meticulous research. So I'm really excited to read this. It is very long. I know Steve Donahue recommends The Journeyer by Gary Jennings. That's his Marco Polo novel. And if I like Aztec, I would love to read The Journeyer too. Gary Jennings just seems to be underrepresented when talking about historical fiction. I mean, you hear about James Clavell and Ken Follett and a lot of Bernard Cornwell, but I don't think I've heard anyone on BookTube other than Jordan cover Gary Jennings or talk about him at length at all. So, I mean, he writes massive, chunky books, which booktubers apparently love. So, I don't know why there isn't more talked about him. Maybe it's because there's no audiobooks for his stuff, but Aztec is on the list, and if I don't get to it in March, I would love to read this year. While, strike while the iron's hot. While my interest is still in this, I would like to get to it. So, it is on the list here. Next up is going to be Son of the Black Sword by Larry Correia. So this series has really blown up on BookTube, at least in this corner of BookTube, over the last few years. Larry Correia just released the last book in this series. He finally finished it. I say finally, it's not like it's been a long time, but he released the last book in the series. And I've heard nothing but good things about this series. I've heard people say it's a fantasy thriller series. I've heard a lot of people praise it, and I've not read any Larry Correia. And as far as Bain Publishing goes, I mean, that's a big blind spot in my reading, and just generally modern popular fantasy authors. I mean, Correia's a big name, so, or maybe it's Correia. I don't know if I'm mispronouncing that, but his Son of the Black Sword series I've heard nothing but good things about, so I would like to read it. And to wrap off this list, we're going to end with another piece of historical fiction, and that's going to be Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. So Wolf Hall is about, I think, Thomas Cromwell, and once again, Steve Donahue highly recommends this series, the whole trilogy that Wolf Hall is the beginning of, but also Jared Henderson has highly recommended this book. And I know Jimmy from the Fantasy Network has been reading it slowly, but has been going through it. So I'm fascinated by this. I love that period of history, A Man for All Seasons, that whole period of English history. So I want to read this. I've heard it's challenging, but I do want to try it at some point. So I'm putting it on the probably not in March, but it's on the radar. So, this is kind of an odd way to do a TBR, but I wanted to leave some flexibility in here, so this was my method of it. So, guys, tell me in the comments which of these books I should be prioritizing. If there's books I haven't listed here that you think I will enjoy, let me know. If there's books on this list that were like, probably not, there's like, nope, like, put this at the front of the line. Yeah, as always, let me know about that. So thanks for watching this. If you like this method of going over the TBR for the next month, the to read list, or if you have suggestions on how to change it or make it better, I'm open to suggestions on this. But thank you guys for watching this. What are you planning on reading in the month of March? And stay tuned. Take care.